Hi, and welcome to the latest Tech Trends podcast, brought to you by Vanilla Plus, IoT Now, and the Evolving Enterprise. I'm Jeremy Cowan, and I'm so glad you could join us for today's sometimes serious, sometimes light-hearted look at digital transformation for enterprises. Now, in a moment, our guests are going to share the serious tech news that's interested them lately. Our first guest is a senior systems architect and a specialist in networking and security, and I will be quizzing him on the chances of a revolution soon in the adoption of smart homes coming about through new standards. And our second guest is a hugely experienced tech journalist. Even better than this, both of them are practiced podcasters, so you can relax. At least two people here know what they're doing. And finally, in What the Tech, we'll share the stories that have made us smile or just curse lately. So let's meet our guests. First, I want to welcome to the Tech Trends pod, Steve Hanna, Senior Principal at our sponsors for today, German semiconductor company Infineon Technology. Steve, welcome.
Thank you, Jeremy. Great to be here.
Steve, where do we find you today?
I'm here at my home in lovely Florida, sheltering in place and enjoying some pleasant weather.
Well, we can all be envious wherever we are, I'm sure. Well, we're doubly pleased for your involvement, Steve. I've been wanting to talk about smart homes since we started these podcasts, and we're delighted to have Infineon here as the sponsors of today's pod. So thank you.
Our pleasure.
Our next guest is UK-based technology journalist Dave Howell. Dave, welcome to the pod. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Hi, Jeremy. Great to be part of this one. Basically, I've been writing about technology. It's probably been 3 decades, I guess, now. I started off back in the day, writing about home computers, Ataris and Amstrads and Dragon PCs and all the rest of it. So I've kind of seen how we kind of started out with some very basic tech, and now we sort of start talking about AI and intelligent homes. It's been an interesting journey.
We've all come a long way. Well, it's great to have you here. Okay, let's start with the headlines. Dave, I'm going to come to you first. What's caught your attention in the news?
Well, for me, I've been tracking, I guess, what we call wearable technology for decades, to be honest. We all wear technology. Wristwatch is a piece of technology. We're used to that. Your spectacles are a piece of technology. But it's interesting for really the last sort of 5 years, that's really accelerated. And recently in the news, we've been looking at, I guess, the next evolution of what it means for that particular piece of technology. What do you mean when we say we want to wear a piece of tech? And then we have bioactive inks. We have wearable textiles. We have intelligent e-textiles. It's all very, very sort of sci-fi, but not so much because this stuff is proven. Wouldn't it be great to have a garment that was intelligent? Wouldn't it be great to be able to wear a jacket or a shirt or a cap, or these days a face mask that was intelligent, that had some kind of intelligence built into the textiles? And that kind of thing is here. That's not science fiction anymore.
That's an astonishing turnaround. Even 6 months ago, we wouldn't have been talking about face masks. So things are evolving quickly. What sort of applications do you think are likely to become the most popular in the next few years?
Well, initially, this kind of tech came out of fashion. You may have seen stuff on the news for the last few years. Some of the more advanced fashion houses were putting some LEDs into clothing on the catwalk, that kind of thing. The most interesting stuff, of course, is coming out of medical. That's really where the advances are being made. What can we do with that kind of technology? Wouldn't it be great to have my shirt, say, I'm sitting here with a shirt on. Now, what if that shirt was monitoring my vital signs? What if that information was being beamed directly to my GP's server? And if I'm sat here and I have a bit of a turn, he knows about that. That kind of thing has been possible with watches and with other sort of wearable devices which you strap to your body. It becomes more interesting when you go to your local supermarket and buy some clothing, and it's intelligent. medical healthcare really is going to embrace this kind of stuff very, very quickly because there's an obvious gain there. It's not a piece of technology you need to sort of give people and make them wear. We all wear clothes, so let's make them intelligent. Let's monitor vital signs. But it's more interesting than that because we're in the age of COVID. Let's move that sort of idea forward. What if we had clothing, maybe even face masks, that could detect the COVID virus? So you're walking down the street, and if you did come in contact with a COVID particle, your clothing tells you that, changes colour, makes a noise, beams something to your local GP. Maybe your face mask changes colour. Maybe someone that you're walking down the street approaching, and their face mask changes colour. Maybe red becomes the COVID colour. And of course, then you can cross the road because you don't want to get near that person because you may or may not be exposed to the COVID virus. That kind of thing is really interesting. I think it's something that is accelerating very quickly. And I think ultimately, if we sort of take this stuff to its conclusion, what do we end up with? Well, we kind of end up with, I guess, what you'd call a sort of digital epidermis. Your skin becomes a digital platform for lots of different things, not just medical, for entertainment and all the rest of it, but medical first. So that idea of a digital skin is really coming into focus.
Yeah, we've been talking about digital twins for industry for that long. It sounds as though digital twinning could come much closer to home in the consumer environment. It's really interesting. Thanks, Dave.
No worries.
Steve, let me turn to you. Which tech story did you notice recently?
Well, I've been working on smart home for more than 20 years now, and I saw a news story in Verge, and I think it actually appeared a couple of other places as well, which to me is the most exciting news that has appeared in that more than 20-year period. The news story is about a standards effort, connected home over IP. And this standard effort is a movement. I think you could call it a groundswell and an industry-wide trend and effort to create a fully interoperable smart home ecosystem spanning all the different companies and their different products. And this includes not only companies that make appliances and light bulbs and switches and the like, but also companies like Apple and Google and Amazon and Samsung, who have their own ecosystems, their own smart home systems that until now have not been able to really talk to each other. So this is incredibly frustrating. I'm sure your listeners have shared my experience of going out and buying a new smart home device and bringing it home. And despite your best efforts, you can't get it to work with the other ones that you have at home already. And, this is, then you end up needing to buy everything from one company or all part of one ecosystem to make it work together properly. The promise of this connected home over IP effort is full interoperability across all of our devices, our smart home devices, and across all of our controlling devices and ecosystems as well. So you should be able to control any appliance or other smart home device with any of your tablet or smart speaker or anything like that, and to do it in a uniform way that ensures ease of use, efficiency, and security. That's what we want out of the smart home, not something where it takes me half the day to set up a device that I bought at the store.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I can see open standards being an absolute godsend, not only to the early adopters who struggled, as you said, but to bringing this to a much, much wider audience who are going to find it's no longer the province of the technologically most proficient.
Exactly. You shouldn't need a doctorate to set up a smart home.
And I'm sure so many people listening to this will have tried to do this. So how soon do you think we will be getting to the stage where these kind of standards are not just being talked about, but actually deployed?
I would expect, and the Verge story confirms that next year in 2021, when we all emerge from our caves, so to speak, post-COVID, I'll be optimistic on that, as I am an optimist, that at that time we'll have these devices available. Of course, it will be a gradual transition, a trickle turning to a stream, turning to a torrent over time as these devices are become broadly available, or as the technology is built into devices that we may already have. But yes, that's the goal, and the announcement from Zigbee Alliance last week indicated that we are still on track to see that goal being met. It's not on the distant horizon.
I think that's just another reason to be looking forward to 2021. So it's great to hear it. I'll tell you, there was some news last week that really struck a chord with me. I'm a bit of a petrol head. That makes me possibly someone from the 19th century rather than the 20th century anyway, not the 21st. And one topic that really makes my blood boil at the moment is so-called smart motorways. I don't know if you've come across them where you are. These are 3-lane highways in each direction, now being expanded to 4 lanes to speed traffic flows. So far, so good, you may say. Except some bright spark had the idea that to save space and construction time, by taking away the escape lane used in emergencies, it would turn it into a 4th lane. So if you have an emergency while driving on a UK smart motorway, you'd better hope that you can freewheel to the next escape area. And by the way, that may be 1.5 miles away or over 2 kilometers. So the UK government admitted in January, when pressed by the media, that smart motorways have already been responsible for 38 deaths. That's 38, in my view, avoidable deaths in the last 5 years. Except by now, since January, it's probably more. Some people say that's not an awful lot, although I suspect there are 38 families out there who would strongly disagree. So it's probably more if you count Australia, New Zealand, and Switzerland as well, which have also adopted smart motorways. I can hear you saying, what on earth has this got to do with today's Tech Trends podcast? The answer is, I was fascinated to read on IoTnowTransport.com that help may at last be coming. And the help is coming from a strange source. Induction loops or cameras are currently installed every 400 meters along UK motorways and many others. But these point sensors obviously can't monitor the entire motorway. And the camera system used to spot broken down vehicles can take an average of 17 minutes to spot a vehicle in trouble. Even worse, it then takes another 17 minutes for a rescue team to reach the scene. But there's a UK company called Fotech. I think they're a spin-off or a subsidiary of BP that points out that sensor networks for smart motorways are actually connected via fiber cabling, which could be used as a sensor. So if you add distributed acoustic sensor technology, that can convert the cable into thousands of vibration sensors, as if almost you're deploying an army of microphones along the roadway. Anyway, these IoT-enabled vibration sensors can detect disruptions in traffic flow as vehicles slow or speed up or change lanes. And the software can tell traffic managers what's happening and where and when, and it'll do it in real time. So I'm sitting here. I don't know how you feel about it, guys, but I hope this works and that transport officials finally see the benefits of the technological solution that may be open to them.
Yes, so I think some advance has to be made there. I mean, clearly, we're on the cusp of a transport revolution with autonomous vehicles. Now, I think initially that's probably going to be in freight. There's going to be, driverless articulated lorries whizzing up and down the motorways in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
That's clearly there's going to have to be some kind of very, very good safety systems in place there. If an articulated lorry is doing 70 miles an hour without a driver, that's going to have to be something that will all have to be signed off on before that becomes a reality. But I think that's initially where this kind of thing will probably get tested. It's something that everyone can see is an issue. And there is a technological solution, but it may be a group of tech which really delivers the whole thing. It's kind of we'll see how that goes, but it's absolutely right that something has to give there. And we can't just rush into this autonomous vehicle future without thinking about the safety.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. I know that the early tests involving driverless heavy goods vehicles have involved ganging, as they call it, of up to 5 trucks at a time. And that's been done by some of the biggest names in technology. Working on trials in northern Spain, amongst others.
Yep.
So it's going to be very interesting to see what that does. I'm sure this distributed acoustic sensor technology, is only one of a number of possibilities, but at least somebody seems to be thinking that this is needed.
Yes, very promising. I will caution that transitioning something from the theory into practice is a non-trivial effort. And one often encounters almost always some unexpected obstacles along the way. So it's good to have the hope and expectation, but it's good to be realistic as well, that this may not be an overnight sensation, but may require some additional work to make it practical.
I think those are wise words, Steve. Anyway, let's move on from that. Steve, let's get back to smart homes, because as we've said, there seems as though there may be a revolution coming. I mean, we've talked, obviously, you just mentioned the need to caution when change is in the air. Can you set the scene for us? What are the current challenges for smart homes?
So I think there are a few that everybody could agree upon, and these are ones that are borne out by customer surveys. The top 3 are: it's too hard to use, things don't work together, and there are sometimes security problems.
Yeah.
So ease of use, interoperability, and security are all 3 cited as concerns, problems, or issues by customers, and a challenge given an approach where everybody is going their own way and developing their own smart home technologies.
So what is it that you think could help address these challenges?
Well, I think the key here is the same sort of thing that was done when the Internet protocol was developed. It wasn't so much that there were flaws in the previous networking protocols. It was just that they didn't work together. So if you were using Apple's in those days, Apple Talk, and somebody else was using IBM's Token Ring or something else entirely, Ethernet or Novell, these things didn't work. The email systems weren't interoperable. And certainly the machines couldn't talk to each other. It was the creation of this common protocol created as a community effort, an open effort, which enabled the full interoperability and then the subsequent innovation that we saw with the development of IP and then the creation of the modern Internet. It didn't come from nowhere. It came from companies who had the experience of building networks, proprietary networks, and operating those for decades. And they took the lessons learned as well as the technologies and brought those together to say, create a best of breed product that everyone could use.
And you mentioned IP. Could you just sort of describe the work that's being done in this push towards connected home over IP standards, or I think they're shortened to chip standards. Why is that so important?
Well, it's essential because it's one thing to have a common communication mechanism like IP and the technologies underlying it like Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or Thread for that matter. But it's another to actually have interoperability among the different devices. So yes, in theory, you might have two things connected to Wi-Fi. Could they talk to each other? Yes, in theory. But in practice, it's rather like having a cell phone network where the people speak different languages. Yes, They could talk, but one's speaking German and one's speaking English. It's just not going to happen. So what you need is not just the technical interoperability at the physical and logical layers, but you need that interoperability at the application layer. They need to be able to talk about something in a common and agreed upon language. And this is the approach that Project Connected Home over IP, or as some call it, Project CHIP, takes. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's reuse the wheel and create a common system of cars and motorways based on the experience that we have already. So, standardize on things like the shapes of signs, to use that motorway analogy, so that everybody knows what that sign means. Standardize how large the vehicles are, and so on and so forth. We're doing something very similar in Connected Home over IP, agreeing upon what are the layers and what are the protocols needed in those layers, and how will those be implemented, and then creating an open source implementation, which actually now is available to anyone who would like to download it. The project has a GitHub repository with documents there, as well as source code that people can use, regardless of whether they're a formal member of the organization, to see what's going on and how it's being structured.
Can you give us an idea of where people can find that information? Where can they access the GitHub?
The best place to go, the easiest, is the Zigbee Alliance, zigbeealliance.org. And then you can find from there the recent blog post, and from there links to the GitHub. I wouldn't want to have to try to spell out the whole thing for you.
No, that'll enable us to find more. So Infineon's obviously taking part in the Zigbee Alliance's chip standard initiative. What role is Infineon playing exactly?
Well, Infineon from its founding, and even before its founding, because our heritage goes back to Siemens, the German technology leader, our DNA is to be a technology leader. That's who we are. We create excellent products built on excellent underlying technology. Now, that being said, we have always been strong supporters of open standards. If you look, for example, at the Trust Platform Module standard, which is the security chip used in all of our Windows PCs and a variety of other embedded systems, that's something where Infineon played a leading role. And we are playing a similar role, a supporting role, but I think an essential one, in Connected Home over IP. Myself, I'm a security expert, so that's what I bring to the effort. 20 plus years of experience in security, including with internet protocols, developing standards in the IETF, the Internet Engineering Task Force. So I'm chairing several security groups and involved in all the security-related groups in Project CHIP. But we will eventually, surely have products related. But at this time, it's primarily a technology development effort, and it's the leadership and the technical expertise that we can contribute that we are bringing to Project Connected Home over IP.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned security. The last question that I wanted to really get to was how security will be mandated for smart home devices? Is it going to be mandatory? And if so, how and why?
So security is an absolute must for the smart home. You really can't have a viable smart home if there's no security, because without the security, you lose people's trust. And trust, once lost, is very, very hard to regain. And for that reason, Project Connected Home over IP has as a founding principle the necessity of strong security. That is an absolute requirement, and every certified device, every device that's authorized to display the logo, will have security adequate to the task of being a smart home device. We don't want to have any weak links in the chain, any chinks in the armor, because that's how the attackers come in. So yes, it will be built into not only every device, but every protocol, and it is built into every protocol that we design in Project Chip. And, you know, it even goes to something so simple as, when I take the device out of the box, how do I introduce it to the network? Do I just turn it on and it automatically finds everything else? Well, that's not a secure thing to do. You need to have a more secure way to introduce the device to the network so that the device learns, oh, this is my new owner. And the owner can verify, yes, this is a valid device. And then they exchange cryptographic secrets, and they're able to communicate securely, and the device is introduced into the home. It's not an easy task. I wrote a paper about this about 20 years ago about the challenges. And now where we are after that 20 years of experience is we have concrete, well understood technologies, the type that are used in many of these devices today, where we can go and say, here's a good way to introduce the devices. Oh, this other way, we tried it. It didn't work. It was too hard or, impractical, too expensive. So we can take things that are time-tested and known to work and include those in. But absolutely, security, that is table stakes. It's an absolute requirement.
Well, I wish you every success in this. It's really encouraging to hear this. Where can we find out more about Infineon's work on this, Steve?
You can go to the Zigbee site, but also go to Infineon. We have a page, infineon.com/IoT-security, where you can find information about our participation in Connected Home over IP and the sort of security technology that we bring to bear, and which can be really valuable for device makers who don't want to have to reinvent the technology. They would rather build in well-established and certified semiconductors that have security built in, the same sorts of semiconductors that are used in passports and credit cards we have available for IoT devices.
Well, thank you. That's very encouraging. I look forward to looking that up, and I'm sure you'll find a bit more traffic coming your way on that as well. Okay, we've reached the last section of the podcast called What the Tech, where we share something tech-based that either made us smile or just made us a bit mad. Dave, what's amused or amazed you?
Oh, that's an easy one. This whole thing that Elon Musk is doing with pigs, brain implants for our pig friends. That's when I read the headline, I thought, have I misread this? Is this an episode of Black Mirror? What's going on there? Then I read a bit further on, and the guy is implanting pigs with electrodes and other controlling devices. This kind of thing. And it's very serious. Apparently, it's something that they are actively pursuing. Initially, to hopefully help with anyone that has some issues with paralysis, that kind of thing. But you read on in the story, I think one of the journalists in the audience asked, well, how are these things installed? I think the lead scientist, well, yeah, we install these things. There may be a little bit of brain damage, but let's not worry about that. Or there may be a little bit of bleeding on the brain, but again, let's not worry about that. The pig seems to be fine. It's just a little bit, Frankenstein's monster.
Slightly
for me.
And what's the ultimate goal? I mean, have they got a midterm goal, either for the pigs or for the technology?
Absolutely. I think the idea, and I guess the driving factor behind this is a good idea. It's just to use some kind of electronic implant to help with a variety of issues. Paralysis always gets sort of pointed to, but it could be other things like Alzheimer's maybe, or even simple things. If you have issues with sight loss, that kind of thing. This kind of thing could potentially develop some kind of therapy, or at least some kind of implant. Whether you'd be very keen to have that kind of thing implanted in your brain, we will see. And we have cochlear implants, and they work extremely well for people with hearing difficulties. I think it's just a spin that Musk puts on these things. That we're going to push the boundaries of what technology can do with implants. And guess what? We'll start out with pigs, and we'll see what we can do with those guys first. How that's going to end, I have no idea. We're going to have some kind of cyber pig at some point. I don't know. But we'll just see how that goes. But that idea that, well, let's not worry about brain damage at this stage is a little bit worrying.
Well, you're right to point out the value of cochlear implants, and I'm sure it's easy to scoff, but it doesn't mean I'm going to look at sausages slightly differently for a while.
Absolutely.
Steve, what's tickled you?
Well, I recently stumbled upon an article with some lovely photos as well on CNN. This features these photos of glass, booths, shall we say, in Tokyo parks that have recently been installed in preparation for the Tokyo Olympics. And at first, one says, okay, maybe it's a telephone booth or something like that. No, you look a little more closely, and you see that these glass booths are public toilets, public facilities.
Yeah.
Which seems like it might have a few issues. Well, you'll be happy to hear that technology is here to save the day. Of course, the advantage is you can see into the toilet to see that it's clean and, yes, a place that you want to go and do your business, so to speak. And when you lock the door, the glass turns opaque to ensure your privacy. But apparently, when you're on the inside looking out, you can't tell the difference or might not notice whether the glass is actually opaque or not.
Well, that's reassuring.
For that reason, they've had some problems where people go in, they think they locked the door, but no.
My days.
They're doing their business in public. I know, people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones and all that. But I think this may have made it out of the laboratory a little too early.
I think you may be onto something there. Gents, I want to share a story from IoT Now. I guess in this case, it falls more into the amazing category. It's a news story headlined, "Global Citizens Face Digital Frustration and Want Cities to Get Smarter." My own digital frustration tends to start when Google or Microsoft don't recognize my passwords. But for some, it starts with where they actually live. According to Capgemini Research Institute, today's city living is falling well short of some citizens' rising expectations in the digital age. Mind you, this was no small study. The Institute explored responses from, I think it was 10,000 citizens and more than 300 city officials across 10 countries and 58 cities. Don't ask me how they managed to get so many city officials to reply. I have trouble getting our council to answer the phone or emails when the bin lorry doesn't turn up. Yes, I'm looking at you, East Hampshire Council. Anyway, Capgemini found many citizens are fed up with the digital situation in their own city, and they seem to be ready to vote with their feet by leaving for a more digitally advanced city. My first thought was, I'm not selling my house, changing jobs and uprooting my family just to get 5G or an IoT connected bus service. But that's perhaps why Capgemini didn't ask me. They say that on average, 40% of global citizens may leave their city in the future because of various digital frustrations. And they do mention some serious issues. For example, 42% of citizens say that pollution is a major concern, and 36% point to a lack of sustainability initiatives, which are, serious problems. 6 out of 10 citizens believe smart cities are more sustainable and provide better urban services. So perhaps that explains why more than a third of the people who were surveyed would actually pay more for a better urban existence.
I think that's true, isn't it? Absolutely.
It is, isn't it?
Wasn't there some research, it's probably over 5 years, I think Ofcom did something, didn't they? And they asked people, what for you are essentials of life, what you cannot live without. And I think top 3 was mobile phones and an internet connection and satellite telly. Yeah. These are the essentials of life, apparently. Food and good family life and children was well below on the list of some stuff that people just cannot live without. So it doesn't surprise me at all that the Capgemini survey right across the Western world is saying, well, digital services are an essential part of life. Everyone understands the frustration when your Wi-Fi doesn't work, or you want to use Netflix and it doesn't work, that kind of thing. But does that become an essential part of life? Apparently it does.
Well, I can testify personally. I've been working from home for the last 16 years, and a few years ago, my wife pointed out that we could live anywhere we wanted to, as long as we had a good internet connection. So at that point, we did a little looking around to choose what was the right place. I think a lot of people in the next few years, now that we've had such extensive experience with remote working, will be doing this to find what is your ideal location. If you really can work from anywhere, where is that anywhere going to be? And I expect to see a lot of small, innovative cities really sparking a renaissance. This is what's happening in the city that I live in now, Claremont, Florida. Just to put in a plug there. We have it all. We've got a smart city, a municipal Wi-Fi. We've got a lovely bike trail along a lake here, not to make anybody too jealous. But I think really that's on the cities to decide, are you going to be a laggard or are you going to be in the avant-garde of technology? If you want to attract that well-compensated knowledge workers, then you really need to be in the avant-garde, because they have their choice of locations, and if you don't have what they're looking for, they're going to pass you by and move on to the next.
I think that's very interesting, isn't it? I was thinking about just the same thing the other day. I read something about the fallout from COVID, pushing people out of cities and out of large conurbations to the countryside and small villages. But of course, in the UK, you go and relocate to a small village and expect a really good internet connection. Well, you're deluded. You're not going to get that. So it's interesting that COVID and maybe pushing people out of cities into more rural areas might actually push the large internet providers, and I'm looking at BT, to actually put decent connections into those rural areas finally.
So true.
So that may be a positive which comes out of this whole pandemic, if people do leave the cities in large numbers and demand really, really very, very good digital services, which at the moment you cannot get unless you're prepared to dig up your own road and put a very large satellite dish on your house.
You're right, David. This is no longer just about smart cities, which has been a discussion for the last decade or more. This is about smart countries and smart countryside too. Anyway, I think we're just about out of time, guys. I'm very grateful for all your comments. Let me finish by saying, therefore, a really big thank you. First to Infineon's Steve Hanna for all your expertise, Steve, and second for sponsoring the podcast.
Happy to do so. Thanks for having us.
It's been great to have you here. And huge thanks also to freelance writer Dave Howell. Thanks, Dave.
No worries. It's been a great chat.
It's been good fun. Thank you too, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us around the world. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you found this pod and be a total star. Give us a 5-star rating and say something that will bring a happy tear to our eyes. It makes such a difference when people are looking for a new podcast. So until the next time, keep safe, keep checking IoT-now.com, vanillaplus.com, and the EE.ai for tech news and views. And join us again soon for another Tech Trends podcast looking at enterprise digital transformation. Bye for now.